What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our cozy little channel. And in today's video, we have a super duper awesome special guest, Selendrea.
Making
Hi, Sel.
pancakes, put them in a pan, and I ain't making pancakes, making pancakes. Orgy. Get my cat down. Get down. No, don't turn back. Me? Bury you in a shallow grave in the woods? Never! I mean, come on, look at this face. Does this look like the face of someone who would murder you in the woods and then sacrifice your soul and then eat your bones? No! Right, chat, back me up. Chat, back me up. I look sweet, right?
Hi, Sel.
Hi. Hi, I'm Selen or Sel or Selendrea, whichever works. Moon has been so sweet to ask me and invite me to this interview, and I am a partnered Twitch streamer as well as a full-time college instructor, as well as a wannabe author. So I wear a lot of hats these days. And yeah, so I'm just excited to chit-chat a little bit about my life and all that.
That's so awesome. So, you mentioned that you're a streamer, you're a professor, and you're a wannabe author. How is it to juggle all those things at once? Because it must be hard.
Yeah. It is. I guess I'm the kind of person that likes to be busy, um, like a good amount, you know. As a teacher, I have more free time in the summer and over winter break. And I'm the kind of person that finds if I have too much free time, I start to get a little stir crazy. So to an extent, I enjoy filling my time with certain things, but when the semester gets really tough or something on stream is stressful or my writing isn't going like I want it to, all of that kind of compounds together and can be a little stressful. But generally speaking, I have found a really good balance for myself. I try to just carve out time and make time for everything in my life if I can. And sometimes that requires me, to put certain things on the back burner. But I think for anybody, especially streamers, having good balance and prioritizing stuff is really important.
Do you find it hard to keep that balance with all those things that you have going on?
Sometimes I feel sometimes like a little guilty if I'm not, active in my friends' streams as often. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of streamers who are friends with other streamers can feel that way. So sometimes I feel like the thing that gets on the back burner is my socializing. And honestly, this is sad, but Twitch is like my main way to socialize with people. So as a person, I can kind of like isolate myself a little bit because I'm focused too much on writing my book or focused too much on going to the gym. So my balance struggles kind of come from that isolation aspect.
Yeah, so honestly, I am the exact same. Twitch is like one of my main social platforms to
Hmm.
connect with people, and again, sometimes it is hard to keep that balance. And you said you go to the gym as well. Do you go to the
I
gym
do.
once a week, twice a week? How what's the gym life like?
I go to the gym as much as I can. When I teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm on campus all day and I walk a bunch on campus, so I don't go to the gym. So I try to get out to the gym Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. I really love fitness. I used to be not at all into fitness. I used to have a really bad diet. I would just eat stuff that was not good for me. And that was before I had my autoimmune illness diagnosed as well. So I was feeling really unwell. And back in like 2017, late 2017, early 2018, I kind of just started a fitness journey and I've just been getting really, really strong.
Damn!
And I like deadlifting, squatting, all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. So what kind of flipped that switch for you to start your fitness journey, going from literally one end of the spectrum to the other?
Well, this is kind of embarrassing, not to like a little mini trauma dump, but my
Go
parents, it's
ahead.
funny, I have like a better version of it, but my parents one day for Christmas they gifted me a Fitbit and they low key were
Ah,
like, "You're overweight. You need to start working out." Because my parents are
damn.
really into fitness and I was overweight, but like there comes a time in a lot of people's lives where they haven't really been paying a lot of attention to their body. Like my body was secondary. I was very not conscious of my body.
Yeah.
So my parents, gifted me a Fitbit and they were like, "Oh, you're overweight." I became super self-conscious of my body. And that's not a great reason for why I got into fitness, but I'm glad that I did at the end of the day, even though it was kind of, born from iffy circumstances. I think fitness has significantly improved my life just because I'm stronger and my heart health is better. and I have more stamina. The way that I look comes secondary still. I've kind of
Yeah.
grappled a little bit with like, having a complex relationship with food has been really, really tough, but I'm a lot healthier these days, especially since I know that I have celiac disease, so that my diet can be very specific.
Yeah. How is life like living as someone with celiac, but also trying to control that kind of diet to make sure you stay within fitness goals or whatever it is that you have planned?
Hmm. So I don't track calories or anything like that. I don't track macros necessarily. I just try to get a lot of protein because I also don't eat meat. So like my focus is just trying to get at least anywhere between like 60 to 80 grams of protein, especially on days where I work out. But like other than that, I just can't eat any gluten, and I'm super, super, super sensitive to it. Uh, I was telling the story. Do you remember when I was on the front page? Yeah, you were helping me mock.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember how I wasn't feeling well that day?
Yeah.
It was because I was eating Cheerios, and Cheerios are technically labeled as gluten-free, but they get cross-contaminated with gluten. And people with celiac disease like me are so sensitive that I was getting really sick from my Cheerios. So, if you ask me what is it like to have celiac disease, most of the time it's uneventful as long as I'm being careful with my diet. But it makes it harder to do things like eat out with your friends at restaurants because I have to, do research ahead of time.
Yeah.
I can't just eat stuff willy-nilly. I have to bring my own food places. And when I do mess up or, get cross-contaminated, I can be sick for like multiple weeks when I recover.
Yeah, that's awful. I mean, not me,
Yeah.
only just through now realizing that Cheerios are not, gluten or like not as gluten-free as they say they are.
It's messed up because they actually donate um, to the Celiac Disease Foundation, which we
Yeah.
actually, my first charity stream, we raised over $1,000 for the CDF. They're a great foundation, generally speaking, but Cheerios, instead of working to get their oats certified gluten free, which you have to pay money, if I remember correctly, as a business to do that, they don't spend the money to get certified. They just donate the money to the CDF so they can put a symbol on their box that says proud sponsor of the Celiac Disease Foundation,
Yeah.
which is so ironic to me because they're literally getting us sick. Anyway,
Oh my
it's on
God.
site Cheerios. I'm still cranky about that.
Cheerios, if you're watching this, you're being called out.
Yeah.
So you did your first charity stream for Sea Light Foundation. When was that? When was your first charity stream?
Oh, that was over the summer. I want to say that was like the summer of 2022. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I started streaming February 2021, and I remember I did it over the summer, so I'm pretty sure it was the summer of 22. Yeah.
So, and how was that? How was it doing your first ever charity stream and raising so much money?
It was really cool. It was really fun. We did a lot of really silly milestones. Our number one milestone when we hit $1,000, everyone was excited for, was what we called pegging. Um, my husband cracked an egg on my head and then put a pie in my face. So pi plus egg equals peg. So now in my community, we have a running joke about me getting pegged on stream. Because we're just goofy. But it was really fun. I was honestly surprised at the turnout, and I even had some people in my personal life, like my sister and my maid of honor for my wedding. They showed up and they donated, and I was like, "Wow, you guys are at my stream." It was really sweet.
That's awesome. So your family supports what you do then?
To an extent, my mom is only like 51, 52, but she acts as if she's technologically illiterate. So every time I tell her about my stream, she is like, "Oh, way to go, that's great." But she's only been in my stream a handful of times and she acts very confused when she's there. So generally speaking, she's supportive, but not as knowledgeable about streaming and stuff like that as she could be. And then my older sister, her name is Glitter Tatiana in stream. If you've seen her, she comes by
Yeah.
and she is a weirdo. She just talks about pooping and farts and all that. So whenever she's around in chat, the stream just gets kind of goofy. But I love that she actually comes by and says hi. It's really sweet.
That's so sweet. So did you and your sister have like a good relationship when you were children, or is it only kind of grown as you've grown up?
Do you want the real answer?
It's completely up to you.
My family has had a lot of My family has had a lot of difficulties, and my
Yeah.
sister is 7 years older than me, and we both went through a lot when we were kids, which I think to an extent kind of united us, but also we, matured from that trauma in different ways, I want to say. My older sister in a lot of ways is a little immature and kind of leans into that like childlike goofiness.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like I grew up really fast. She kind of stayed really childlike and I grew up really fast. So we don't always see eye to eye, and she's not currently talking to my mom, so that is sort of like a rift between us. But I would say that we're relatively close. We could be closer though. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think, yes, I mean, sometimes that like that childhood trauma or whatever it is can bond you and bring you closer together, but at times it definitely kind of puts a rift, especially if, you have no contact with mom, one person, others
hmm
not. Yeah.
But it kind of helps make me who I am, and that's what my first book that I actually finished writing was all about, our family, because we have a lot of stuff to talk about in a novel. So I wrote this half autobiographical retelling of my childhood and the events that we went through in my family, and then half horror fiction. So it's this like interesting combination and blend of, my personal life, but make it fantastical, make it phantasmagoric, make it surreal. That's kind of the project that I finished writing, I think about like a month ago, I want to say. So I'm in the process of querying literary agents right now, and it's been really tough. I've gotten a lot of rejections so far.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, honestly.
It's normal though.
Yeah, I'm so excited to read this book, by the way. Like, just so you guys know watching at home. Sal's been talking about this book for weeks, and we've been
I
here
have.
like waiting patiently for this book for weeks. But how was it writing your book whilst also being a professor and being a Twitch
Yeah.
partner and going to the gym and living your day-to-day life?
It honestly, I love writing. So, the time that a lot of other people would spend watching TV, I'm not saying that watching TV is bad. I love watching TV. But like the time that people spend watching TV, I would be writing because it's like a hobby to me and I really like it. And this book was so easy for me to write because it's like my whole life was building up and culminating into this book, I think. So
Yeah,
the words came very easily. This other book that I'm working on right now is a little bit harder for me to get out, but that's a different story. As a teacher, I spend a lot of time on campus in office hours waiting for students to come by, and oftentimes I'm just there by myself. So, what I do? Normally, I'm in a handful of streams, and sometimes I watch YouTube. But since I've been writing, I find that office hours is a really great time for me to get that work done. And honestly, I only stream twice a week right now. And I think a lot of times that I am like kind of shooting myself in the foot by doing that. I think, I could potentially be more successful on Twitch if I was more consistent with streaming. But I found that twice a week allows me to pour a lot more effort and love into my other things like writing, like teaching, like working out.
yeah.
And so right now it kind of like fits me better.
I love that. Do you have any tips for either smaller or growing streamers who are trying to keep that balance of personal and social life, but also
hmm
streaming and keeping up with social media and all this jazz?
I would say a really big tip is that chasing numbers is just really going to harm you in the long run. The whole reason why I had to take a really big break from Twitch at the end of 2023 was because I got into that mindset of like, well, everybody else is doing so much better than me. I have to do better, have to do better. And,
Yeah,
I think that that is going to burn out a lot of streamers.
yeah,
So if you are sacrificing your social life, if you're sacrificing your psychological well-being in order to stream constantly and constantly stream, trying to worry, trying to, you know, be in everybody's streams all the time and checking your numbers all the time and freaking out about that, which trust me, I've been there. I'm a lot healthier about it now, but
yeah,
I would just suggest kind of taking a step back and reassessing what your goals are, because for most of us, we're just vibing on Twitch. And speaking as someone who got partnered last year in July, my life hasn't changed that much. I don't make more money on Twitch because I'm partnered. If anything, I think sometimes people see like a partner streamer and they're like, "Oh, she's got it. Like I don't need to
Yeah.
worry about her," or "Oh, she's too good for me. I can't like be her friend," which always makes me really sad. So there's like a distance that's created when you get partnered.
Yeah.
So, and people who average like 30, 40, 50 sometimes do better in other aspects with their content
Definitely.
and the money they make on Twitch than partnered streamers. So, I guess long story short, my takeaway is to just kind of take a deep breath, reassess your goals on Twitch, and just have a lot of gratitude for the people who do show up for you.
That is really, really wise. I love that. So you mentioned you took a year-long break. What did you do in that year-long break? Because, streaming was a part of your daily routine, and then that kind of just went away for a year.
Hmm. It was actually 6 months. It was from the end of September to the beginning of April. So October, November, December, January, February, March, a little bit over 6 months. And that was over the winter, and I get the winter sads sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was spending a lot of time just like a little bummed out over the winter. But then we also moved into my current place. So we left behind this old crappy apartment and moved in here. So moving took, a few weeks to really get settled in. And so I could spend a lot more time focusing on that because I wasn't streaming. And then I just tried to really relax a lot, just engage in my hobbies, unwind. I started cross stitching again, which I really enjoy doing. Just trying to, and I did a lot of journaling too. So I was just kind of working on my mindset, which is easier said than done, trust me. But I
Yeah.
made a lot of strides, and that led me to a place where I felt comfortable taking on streaming again.
That is awesome. How was it coming back from 6 months away from your community, from Twitch, from being live?
I was really scared because you hear often that when you take a big break like that, your viewership goes away. And that was actually the opposite effect for me. When I came back, my viewership actually increased significantly.
Wow.
And so I could never have predicted that, but I was so grateful for that. And I think what had happened for me was that I had made so many genuine friendships with people, because I'm not out here just being like, I'll come hang out in your stream for 5 minutes, and if you come hang out with my stream for 5 minutes, then like I'm not like doing that sort of support
Yeah.
for support behavior. I just really love connecting with other people, and I think those genuine connections that I had built lasted the time, even though I was away. And I did, a decent amount of promoting on social media that I was going to come back. I was still really scared, but I had a lot of support from other streamers and my existing community members, and we actually got some pretty fun raids pretty early on. We got a raid from Dechart Games, which is a couple, and the guy played what's his name? He played Connor in Detroit Become Human. So the
Oh,
like the
wow.
mocap actor actually like streams on Twitch, and he raided in, which is really cool. And then we got a raid from Tyler Oakley, the YouTuber who also streams on Twitch.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, what is the universe is being so nice to me? What's happening? So we got kind of lucky when I came back, but we were able to partner push pretty soon after I came back in 2024. And it was just kind of a whirlwind, honestly.
Wow. What awesome raids, by the way. Detroit Become Human actor, Tyler Oakley. Awesome. That's so fantastic.
They were so sweet too.
Oh, amazing. So, you partner pushed from, what was it? You say April?
Yeah, well, we started our partner push in June. No, end of May. End of May.
So, you partner pushed from May to July when you hit partner.
Yes.
How was
Hmm.
that partner push? Was it tiresome? Was it kind of hard? Or was it smooth sailing, pretty easy?
It was pretty smooth sailing. There were only a handful of streams where we didn't hit the, average requirement. And the hardest part
Yeah.
actually was waiting for the email after I applied because I was pretty confident we were going to get it, but they took like a week to reply, and I was convinced that we were going to have to start over. I was so stressed out.
Yeah.
Um, but generally speaking, it was pretty fun. Everybody had good energy, and I've actually noticed in the streaming community, at least in the circles that I'm in, there's been like a shift where when I first started streaming in 2021, if you partner pushed, if you even mentioned that you wanted to be partnered, other streamers would be like, ew, oh, that's not a good idea. You're just arbitrarily inflating your community's
Yeah.
support for a period of time, and then you're going to lose all of your viewers. And so there was this like really negative view about partner pushing, but now, especially when I was doing it in 2024, I think a lot more people were very open and supportive for that. Because it is pretty easy to just pull up your friends and leave a lurk to support their partner push, even if it is temporary. And I had the thought process that if we hit partner and then my viewership goes back down a certain amount, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't need a certain level of viewership for anything. I'm not trying to get sponsors right now. Um, it would just be like an ego thing, right?
Yeah.
I want to stay at 75 average viewers for a period of time to prove that I'm worth it and I'm good enough. No, I already know that I'm worth it and I'm good enough. I make good content. So I was
Yeah.
already kind of like preparing myself to be okay with that.
I love that. So, have you always had dreams of being partner when you first started streaming? Was that why you first started streaming, to become partner? Or what were your motives to start streaming and to try and get this
Huh.
partner
That's a good
status?
question. I never thought I was going to get partnered. That wasn't really a thought process for me until I started averaging in the 50s, and then I thought, oh, maybe this will happen. But when I first started streaming, this is so silly. I was a World of Warcraft raider with a pretty decently competitive guild.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so in order to be more competitive at the game, I built a PC and I got all of my peripherals and I was really excited. And one of the peripherals that I got was that pink Razer Kraken kitty headset with the cat ears. You know
Oh,
what I'm talking about?
yeah. Yeah.
Like the cat ear one. And I sent a picture of it to my friend, my best friend, and she said, "Oh, you look like a streamer. You should stream your World of Warcraft." And so I jokingly mentioned that to some of my WoW friends, and they were like, "Yeah, you should stream it. You should stream our raids. That would be really fun." So I said, "Okay, why not? I'll try it." So at first, I was just streaming very casually our World of Warcraft content. And I had my guild members coming by to support me.
Yeah.
And then I thought, this is kind of fun. Why don't I branch out and I try some other games? So I started trying some Stardew. I played some horror games, and I joined some Facebook groups because I was still using Facebook at the time. I don't anymore. I joined some Facebook groups for other streamers, and I started to just kind of like dig my heels a little deeper into the community. And we relatively quickly built a, a decent sized community of really cool, really kind people. And can I cuss?
Yes, go
Am I
ahead.
allowed to cuss?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was shit at streaming at first. I was shit at it. I only had one monitor, so I was reading chat on my phone, and I was really bad at reading chat. I was awkward. I didn't talk very much. So I was not a polished streamer at all, and I kind of like learned as I went.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes it's really important to go into streaming at first, not having that kind of, I want big, big numbers, big kind
Hmm.
of, but big this, big that. Do you have any tips for these people starting out who do want to hit these big numbers? What tips do you have?
I think it's okay to dream big. I think forcing it to be the end all be all of your streaming journey is not mentally healthy. I think if I could rephrase that, there are so many amazing things that you can get out of streaming, right? You can meet people, you can learn more about yourself, you can enhance your speaking skills, you can share games that you love with others. The community aspect to me is just the biggest thing, and I honestly am a better person because I stream. So if a certain numerical success, whether that's an average viewership or money, if that's what's driving you, and that's the number one, I worry about that a little bit because frankly, success on Twitch is like 30% luck, 70% skill. Maybe like closer to 60-40, but luck plays a huge role. I see a ton of people who are very good at streaming and they have a lower viewership. And then sometimes I see people who are just fine at streaming, but they're streaming to like 300 people, you know? So putting your heart on the line and caring so much about this kind of stuff when you can't necessarily control it, that's not going to be good in the long run. That being said, having goals is totally fine as long as you're just kind of normal about it, you know?
Yeah. So, are you a sole believer that you were lucky to get a partner, or do you think that there was lots of skill involved, or a bit of both?
I think that we did get lucky. I think I struck while the iron was hot because I had a lot of excitement because I was coming back to Twitch.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, we got some really cool raids, and that those raids like allowed me to build up my community to an extent. There are still some people that came through that raid that still are a part of my community.
Oh,
But I think that I'm a decent streamer. My
yeah.
streams are very specific, you know. You're not going to come to my streams to see me really dive deep into story-rich games or be really great at first-person shooting games, anything like that. You're going to come to a Cell stream because you want to relax and hang out with a like-minded community, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that I manage chat pretty well. I try to never ignore a message and I try to make sure people feel included. I try to manage the community to the best I can to make sure that we're extremely inclusive. Um, yeah, obviously I make mistakes sometimes, but we're all just human, right? But I think
Exactly.
it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
I love that. And I honestly love your streams. I love just hanging out and chilling. And one thing that I've noticed that I really love about your streams is that you can always keep a conversation up. Like I could go and lurk and then come back and you'd still have a conversation going.
Hmm.
You seem to be able to talk with people really well. Did that come naturally to you? Like you've always been good to talk with people, or is it something like to learn as you kept on streaming?
I think like the nugget was there, the seed was planted, but I think streaming and practicing it through stream allowed it to flourish more. Because honestly, if you see me in person, I am not much of a talker. I am very introverted. I am autistic, so I small talk especially makes me lose my mind. It's uncomfortable for me to make eye contact for prolonged periods of times. So growing up, I've always kind of viewed myself as someone who wasn't good with these more casual conversations.
Yeah.
But once you get like deep with me or I'm talking about something I'm passionate about, I'm just such a talker. So I think Twitch has kind of pushed me to being better at having these casual conversations and being open to meeting new people. Because, like, I was thinking the other day, some of the conversations we have are so silly. We're just like, oh, we're talking about the weather, or did you see that movie last night? And if someone in person had asked me those things, I'd be like, oh my God, why are we small talking? But there's something about my community that I just genuinely care about their opinions on even these small things, you know?
Yeah, so do you find it easier to small talk on stream than IRL because you are kind of separated by the screen? Or is it
Yeah.
just truly that your community is really good at talking that you can kind of get distracted by it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I really trust my community or I'm like really comfortable with them these days because you see me on stream. I'm not like buttoned up or anything like that. I just allow myself to be a little weirdo.
Yeah,
Whereas I think in a lot of other circumstances where I'm kind of forced to small talk, there's some semblance of judgment there. Like I'm at work or I'm at a party where I'm meeting people and I don't feel as comfortable to just like shed my human skin and be weird around these individuals.
yeah.
But also, I do think being de individuated and not being able to kind of like see somebody in person face to face does help reduce that inhibition to an extent.
Yeah. So would you say that your like stream life, Selendrea and your IRL personality and your IRL life is very different, or does the line kind of blend a little bit?
I think we all compartmentalize our personality traits, you know? I think I'm definitely 100% me on stream. I might be less likely to tell someone to go fuck themselves, um, even if I'm thinking it, because I don't, you know.
No, yeah.
Don't want to be rude on stream necessarily in certain circumstances. Sometimes I do tell people to go fuck themselves. It's situation dependent. But I do think that I am very myself on stream, whereas in certain circumstances I might be a little bit more closed off, I guess. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm like a different person or a different personality. I think I'm just amplifying certain personality traits while I'm talking to my community versus kind of diminishing them in other circumstances for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, definitely. Love that. Yeah, again, I just love the way that you can kind of keep up the conversation and talk about anything, honestly. Especially things that you're passionate about, like your PhD in psychology. What was it like kind of getting that PhD and then now using it to be a professor?
Grad school was okay. Grad school, it took me about 5 years to get my master's and then my PhD as well. And I did most of that in person, and then COVID happened, and I had to finish up my PhD virtually, which was a little bit stressful. And, I loved learning about psychology. I still love psychology. I don't think that I really like scientific writing. So in
Yeah.
academia, especially, I went to and I now work at a university that's called an R1 university, which essentially R1 universities put a lot of importance on research. And they're also the types of universities that pull a lot of grant money for research. So our program put a huge emphasis on creating a big body of research. And I don't mind coming up with research ideas. I think I have that sort of creativity, but writing about the research and then presenting it to people and then them going, "Why didn't you do this? You should have done this. What were you thinking?" And then having to defend myself was my least favorite part. So
Yeah.
through grad school, I kind of realized that the research route isn't really for me. And that was a part of the reason why I decided to focus on a role in academia where I just teach. I teach and I also mentor students and supervise students. So that is the type of academia that I actually really like and I flourish in. Despite students being horrible to me sometimes, I do generally love my students a lot, and I really like being able to take my knowledge of psychology and use that to inspire students to learn and want to learn more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. So, from being a child, did you always love science? Was science the thing that you wanted to do forever? Or did one night you just want to do science? Where kind of did the backstory or origin of you becoming a science professor come about?
I think like I always generally liked science, but when I was young, I was more interested in doing something creative. I really love singing, and even when I was young, I really wanted to be a singer. But of course, my parents, very practical people, they said, "No, you're gonna get an actual job."
Yeah.
And then I also really wanted to be an author. Ever since I was young and I could write with a pencil, I was filling notebooks with stories. And then I elevated that to writing on my mom's computer. I would have Word open and I would just, be writing nonsensical stories. So I didn't really necessarily have a plan. My mom really wanted me to go to law school and to be a judge because she said I was very good at arguing. But that was never really something I wanted to do. And then when I was in high school, because of all the stuff going on in my family, I just was not focusing on grades. Also, I was, undiagnosed neurodivergent, and it was very difficult for me to succeed in classes because I would go to class all the time. I would pay attention, I would take notes, and I would do really well at exams. But any work that I needed to do outside of class, I just couldn't get myself to do it. So,
Yeah.
homework, reading, all that kind of stuff, my brain would just not do it. So I ended up graduating high school with like a 2.7 or something like that GPA. And the one class that inspired me to go into psychology was my AP Psych class my senior year. I loved the content, hated the teacher. The
Oh.
teacher, bless her soul, was an ex lawyer who decided at like 45 years old that she was going to quit her job being a lawyer to go teach at a high school. She
Yeah.
knew nothing about psychology, and it showed. So I didn't do any of the homework. I didn't study anything like that. And so one day she pulled me aside. Do you know how AP courses work? I don't know if they have them where you live.
Not really. We don't really have those kind of like specific courses. It's just in high school you take either science, combined science, or triple science, which is you study all three at once.
Okay. The way it works in the States, an AP course, you basically can take the course and then take a test at the end. And if you get a good enough score on the test, that score can get you out of having to take that class in college. So
Ah,
basically, I could skip taking general psychology if I got a good enough score on the AP test at the end of the semester. So, the entire time we're leading up to the end of the semester, and my teacher's getting concerned about my ability to do well on the AP test because I have a poor grade. So she pulls me aside and she says, I think that maybe you should opt out of taking the AP test because it doesn't seem like you're really grasping the content. And I said, no, I'm grasping the content. I'm just not doing work. And she just
yeah.
like couldn't understand that, and I couldn't articulate it to her. Um, so I ended up taking the AP test anyway, and I basically aced it. So I said to myself, you know
Nice.
what? I like this content. I'm good at it. That's what I'm going to major in. So I decided, not entirely knowing what I wanted to do with my degree, I decided to major in psychology, and I found pretty quickly that I wanted to go to grad school, and that's kind of how that happened.
That's so awesome. So did it take long to get a professor's job, or did you need to go through other kind of roads to get to that place?
So technically, I'm not a professor, I'm an instructor. So the
Ah,
way that works in the US is that professors usually take on a research role as well, whereas you can have like teaching professors, but that's something that I do want to eventually be promoted to.
yeah,
An instructor is a slightly lower rung, and my responsibilities are entirely teaching, whereas professors usually they have to teach, they have to do research, and they have to do service, which involves being on committees.
yeah,
I'm on committees anyway, and I don't get credit for it, but they're like volunteer positions, but they're committees I'm passionate about.
yeah.
I did end up doing a job hunt when I was finishing up my PhD, and the job that I really, really, really wanted was a tenure track professor position at a school that primarily focuses on teaching and doing some research with undergrads, so I wouldn't have to take on graduate students.
Yeah.
And I was this close to getting the job, but then randomly someone decided to apply for the job and they had been a chair at their previous position with a ton of experience. So they decided to
Oh,
go with them over me.
oh
So
no.
I was bummed about that. And then I ended up getting two other job offers from schools, but they were in cities that I just didn't feel like I would be happy there. Like one of them was in Montana and it was low key in the middle of nowhere.
Oh no.
And when I was asking them about like, okay, I have celiac disease. Like, what kind of grocery stores do you have around? They were like, well, we have this one small grocery store. They could maybe special order you some food. And I was like, this is not going to work. Also, their department was kind of rude during the interview.
Oh no.
So I ended up taking an instructor job at the university where I got my PhD because they desperately needed more teachers. And although it was slightly less pay than those tenure track positions would be, I'm really glad that I did it because I guarantee you that I would be less happy if I was working those other jobs. Even at school that I thought I really wanted to go to, if I was in a tenure track position, I think that I would have less free time. I
Yeah.
might not have even been able to continue streaming. And the pay difference between that position and my position is not worth that stress.
Yeah, that is so valid. So, to fast forward a little bit to you becoming a Twitch partner, you have a stream team called Fae and Fauna. Could you tell us a little bit about what the team is and how it came to be?
I had always wanted to be on a stream team. I had applied for maybe three other stream teams during my career and never heard back from any of them. And so I was like, dang, maybe one day I'll be a partner and I can make my own stream team.
Yeah,
And when we were getting really close to getting partner, I made a website, I made a name, I started to really concretely think about this. And I was prepared when we got partnered to be able to kind of launch the stream team pretty soon after. And Fae and Fauna is named after, I just love the Fae. I'm a
yeah.
little fairy elf myself. And then Fauna was the name of my my cat, my little witchy familiar who passed away in 2020. So I
Oh,
wanted
I'm
to,
sorry.
represent her some way. And I didn't want to have a stream team of only cozy content creators because I felt that that was a little too niche.
Yeah.
So our sort of ethos is that we represent streamers who are very community and inclusivity oriented. So I specifically wanted to look for streamers who care about social issues and aren't afraid to make that clear in their streams, and also are very chatty and really focus on cultivating a healthy community. And so we range anywhere from streamers who play, first person shooters to they dabble in some horror games
Yeah.
to the cozy side like me. And everybody that's on our stream team so far has been very kind and very supportive individuals. And so it's kind of become like this little family that I have on the side, and we, give each other support and advice in the Discord. We're currently doing a raid train right now, which basically everyone has signed up for a specific time where they're going to stream, and then they raid into the next person in the next time slot. And we low key do raid trains all the time anyway, just unofficially, because we all just kind of raid each other. But it's
Yeah.
nice to kind of do this more official thing.
I love that. And the Fae and Fauna kind of brand and your brand is really, really rich and like everyone knows that you are the Stinky Lavender Elf of Twitch. Where did that come about? How come your brand is
Oh
so
no.
strong?
I don't remember. I think I had a sound alert available to play on my stream called the "You smell like a baka" sound alert, and I had a community member who would do that all the time, and we would do like a stink check, and I would smell my armpits and say whether or not I was stinky. So for some reason, it just became part of my community that we were all stinky little guys. Um, and I've always been interested in the Fae and stuff like that. So I very quickly decided, you know what, now that I'm streaming, I this is an opportunity for me to do cosplays and dress up and lean into that. So I bought elf ears and I would wear my elf ears every now and then on stream. I would buy, really pretty dresses and hair accessories and stuff like that. And it's been a really cool outlet for me to kind of indulge in that sort of stuff because, kind of like we were saying earlier, with certain in person contexts, that sort of energy isn't as acceptable, you know,
Yeah.
except for Halloween. But on Twitch, like you can be whoever you want. People think it's cool if you're dressed up like a witch, which is something I
Yeah.
really like about the community.
That is so fantastic. I love the story of how it came to be. Like what how awesome. Um
Very random.
Very random. Do you have anything to say to streamers who are struggling to find their brand and they want to be original and unique and want to be their own person, but they just can't seem to fit into that role?
Well, I will say that, especially as an author, I kind of ascribe to the idea that everything has been done before. Like there are other people that wear elf ears. Maybe they don't call themselves stinky elves. I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there that does, but um, you know, the ability to be so incredibly unique has to come from your own genuine individuality. So it's taken me, I'm almost 30, right? It's taken me several years for me to really figure out my own identity and who I am. And part of that was because I was streaming, and streaming allowed me to kind of, experience myself in a new situation and figure out who I really am. But when it comes to branding, just think about what you care about. What symbols, what colors do you want to represent you? What are things that you're passionate about? But also outside of just the aesthetic part, what are you trying to foster in your community? Are you somebody who really likes high energy? How can you represent that physically, aesthetically? Are you somebody who really likes cozy things? How can you represent that? Is there a certain inside joke or trend that you do on stream? For example, if you're someone who always has a cup of tea when you start stream, maybe that cup of tea can become a big part of your branding. Is there, a joke that you guys always say? Like I notoriously hate dad jokes, right? That's like the whole thing on my stream. I can't stand dad jokes. So I lean into that, right? And even though I hate dad jokes, my community members love forcing me to listen to dad jokes. So you can make things more of a ritual. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Like you can give even small things importance, and I think that giving those small things importance and making them more ritualistic and fun between members kind of strengthens your community and also can strengthen your branding.
that is awesome. What a great piece of advice. So, do you have any like long-term goals or aspirations that you want to achieve with streaming? Because you've been streaming for around 4 years now.
Hmm.
So, do you have any more long-term goals? Because you've hit partner, which is mostly a lot of small streamers' dream is to hit that partner status. Do you have any kind of thing that you want to push towards on your road?
I I did apply for ambassador, and that was kind of a long shot, right? But I thought, why not throw my hat in the ring and apply?
Yeah,
I think long term, I would like to just generally grow our community and continue to have a healthy community and meet more friends. Um, but also being an ambassador would be really, really cool. I kind of want to be able to get a little bit more involved in that sort of community building aspect. It's just difficult because, a lot of the goals that I would have for myself would involve streaming more often.
yeah,
And so I kind of go back and forth about, do I want to invest more time into this? If this is important to me and I really want to put all of my eggs into the streaming basket, I would need to kind of pull back from other things. So I guess you're catching me kind of right now in a period of my life where I'm not entirely sure where I want to go with streaming. I know that I always want to have it in my life because I love it.
yeah.
And especially when I took that break, I realized how much I did miss it. But I think I have some plans over the summer. So those are
Oh,
like kind of short-term goals that I have some plans over the summer that I'm planning to do. So maybe we'll see how that goes, and that'll kind of inform where I go from there.
oh, very exciting. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay tuned. Yeah, a lot of streamers, small streamers, me included, kind of have those goals and those aspirations that they really want to push for, but sometimes they forget how long streaming can be to kind of get anywhere, you know.
Yep.
Did you feel that same way of kind of feeling like you're getting nowhere even though you were doing it for a certain amount of time?
Oh yeah, we hit like a plateau for a long time. Well, actually, we hit two plateaus. I think we averaged in like the 30s for a while, and then we averaged in the 50s for a while. And they say this in publishing as well, since I'm trying to get my book published right now. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think same thing with streaming. There's some people that just they get really lucky and they just skyrocket. But honestly, there are some downsides to that because I think if you start streaming and then within a month you're hitting partner numbers, you haven't had as much experience hands on
Yeah,
with managing a community of that size. Whereas if you slowly build up and you get that experience, at a more reasonable rate, you're going to be a lot more equipped to manage that community if and when you get there. So, really, everybody's journey is very different. Everybody's got their own individual sense of streamer. Everybody's got their own challenges in their lives that may impact how and when they stream.
yeah,
And comparing to other people is really just damaging in the long run.
yeah,
So it's totally okay to just take your time, enjoy it while you have it. I think something that's really helped me is just kind of adopting that gratitude mindset. It's okay. It's totally okay to have goals. I think being able to hit milestones and hit achievements and celebrate that with your community is really fun. But I think we also just as streamers need to learn to celebrate the quiet moments as well. Did you have a stream where a chatter you hadn't talked to in a long time came by and you had a good conversation? It was really cool and everybody loved the game you were playing and you felt really attractive on stream or like you were feeling yourself on stream, right?
yeah,
That's as much of something to celebrate as a stream where your average is doubled. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. And you said before that, you're publishing a book. What are you going to do when the book finally publishes? Are you going to keep that author life separate to your Twitch life? Or are you going to say, I've got a book, feel free to go read it?
Yeah, I mean, if I get published, I want to get traditionally published. I guess last case scenario, I might self-publish. I do want to intermingle it because I tell you guys in my community so often about my book, and I am publishing under a pen name. So there's
Yeah.
no issues with doxing there.
Yeah.
So I do kind of want to mix the two. I think, pragmatically speaking, that is helpful for me because getting a book off the ground as a debut author is difficult. So
Yeah.
having the support of a community to be able to go out and purchase my book or tell your friends about my book is super helpful. So if I start from, you know, level 0 without my stream community, it's just going to be harder for me to do well with the book.
Yeah.
And I also am just excited to share it with you guys because I worked really hard and I
Yeah.
think you guys are gonna like it. So being able to, have you guys read it and tell me what you think, I'm just really excited to see people's reactions to it.
That's so awesome. And have you hyped up your book like you are like it's already published, or are you somebody who is like not wanting to celebrate too early? What's your thoughts?
Knowing how difficult the publishing world is, I don't want to hype it up too much. I was saying that I got rejections from agents. It's very common when you go to look at the statistics of how many people have queried an agent versus how many they have actually, responded to in a positive way. It's only like
Yeah.
1 to 2%. So most wannabe authors, aspiring authors, I guess I should call them, are going to get like a slew of rejections before they ever hear a yes. I think famously, Stephen King, his first published book was Carrie, and Carrie got rejected by over 60 different publishers before Stephen King heard a yes. And he actually threw his manuscript angrily in the trash can. And his wife, she might have been his girlfriend at the time. I can't remember if he was married, but she basically was like, "Hey, don't give up." And she pulled the manuscript out of the trash can. So, just like streaming, I think this is really relevant to streaming too, is just, despite rejections, I have to remind myself that agents are very picky, and they need to personally connect with the story. So, rejections don't necessarily mean that it's a bad story. But I expect to continue to be rejected for a period of time. And I
Yeah.
don't want, my community to take that as like, oh, well, Cell isn't actually doing well or it's never going to get published or something like that. I want them to be excited for me when I do actually get that yes.
That's awesome. And you were talking about Stephen King's story of, his girlfriend or wife being, supportive and saying, come on, keep doing it. Has Stephen King been a muse for you for a while since you said that you are writing this like horror supernatural book?
Yeah, he definitely is one of my favorite authors. I know that's basic. I do read a lot of other authors, but I've just always loved his style of writing, and I've read probably like 10 or 12 of his books so far.
Yeah.
As a person, growing through his author career, Stephen King dabbled a lot with addiction and stuff like that, and he has moments in his books that he wrote maybe while, struggling with his addiction and the things that he was imbibing with. Imbibing, is that the word? Imbibing?
I'm piping.
When you take drugs? Oh my god, let me define imbibing. Imbibing.
Imbibing.
Drink alcohol. Oh, is it specifically alcohol? He also did a lot of cocaine, is what I'm trying to say. Um,
I mean, valid. Valid.
so do I, is he my muse for doing a lot of cocaine and writing really strange scenes in books? Not necessarily. And do I want to be as big as Stephen King? Not necessarily, but I think I just read a lot of books. A lot. I read anywhere between like 6 to 10 books a month, and just
Damn.
absorbing other people's writing and just like figuring out what I like and what I don't like has really helped to shape me as an author.
I love that. And do you think that your childhood and your personal life has helped you write those stories?
For sure. I think I have the ability to really dive deep into some of the darker aspects, and a lot of my psychological education also helps me in writing because a lot of my writing is very emotion and psychology focused. So it's not just like what the character is doing, but what is the character thinking? How does that affect her emotionally? How does that make the body feel? So I think going through the things that I've been through gives me insight into how someone would feel when they're going through this. I can use my life experiences to inform this character, who, of course, even in the book that's based on my family, the main character isn't quite me.
Yeah.
She's definitely modeled after me, but we aren't the same person. And I think that's why when I was younger, my writing wasn't necessarily as polished because I didn't have as much life experience, you know?
Yeah.
I think the more general life experience, like I've been in a car accident now. I know what it's like to be in a car accident, so I can write more accurately about a character being in a car accident. So I think just all of our life experiences can help to inform us. I also do a ton of research
Yeah.
for some of the more gory scenes in my finished novel. I was Googling some stuff and I'm probably on a watch list now because I was like, I need to Google just to make sure I didn't have any inaccuracies. But the stuff I was Googling was a little sus, I'll be honest.
Oh my God. How to bury a body. Uh, um,
Exactly.
yeah, I love that. So you were in a car accident, as you just mentioned. I remember you actually talking about this. This is kind of when I finally like first got into your community. Um, did that put a hold on everything in your life, or was it not as bad?
It totally totaled my car. So I was without a car for a while and I didn't have rental car insurance. So my husband was having to drive me all over town, which was, inconvenient for the two of us. But now, because of that accident, I was totally fine physically.
Yeah.
Because of
My
that
God.
accident, I was actually able to purchase my dream car. So,
Amazing.
because I got the full amount for the totaled car, so I added that to my down payment, and then I also added a little bit for my savings to the down payment to make my monthly payment pretty small. So now I'm driving my dream car. So I guess the universe works in funny ways sometimes. I would say that it was definitely an inconvenience to have to deal with insurance and stuff like that, but it turned out as about as good as it could.
That's awesome. I love that. And again, to kind of go back to what we said earlier about streaming and how you've been streaming for all these years, what kept you going? What kept you driving to keep on fostering the amazing community that you have? Because a lot of streamers seem to fall off quite early because of, maybe they
Mm-hmm.
do have that kind of go, go, go mindset and they burn out and they just stop. What kept you
Mm-hmm.
going?
I think it's similar to completing a piece of art to me, or completing a cross stitch or completing a book chapter. I guess I just feel satisfied knowing that I created something.
Yeah.
Because I don't view myself as like an influencer. I view myself more as a content creator. Is my content the exact same thing as, a really well put together YouTube video? Not necessarily, but I'm making content for people to consume online. And when I get done with a stream, I always go back and I select the thumbnail for it,
Yeah.
and I, go through and I make sure that any clips that I wanted to clip are done. And it just is like a sense of satisfaction, especially when, it's a stream where we had really good conversation and I felt like things flowed and people are having a good time. It is just extremely rewarding for me, I guess I should say. And some days, like I canceled this Sunday, some days I feel like maybe not today, maybe you know, the brain isn't wanting a stream today and I would prefer to do something else, or I need to do something else, like I'm behind on stuff. But most of the time I'm like pretty excited to stream. Something that helps me to get motivated is, you know, I'm I stream physically, so I'm not like a VTuber, so this might not be relevant for those who are VTubers, but I try to come up with a sort of aesthetic theme
Yeah.
each stream. So I will like match my makeup to the outfit that I'm wearing, and I'll think really hard about what my hairstyle is going to look like. And I get really excited to share outfits and stuff like that with my community members. So I have to kind of like hype myself up to get on stream.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's similar with a lot of streamers. I mean, I now have been streaming for a year and a little bit, and every time I'm setting up OBS, setting everything, my heart is like, oh my God, stressy,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Is that still for you? Do you still get like anxious to press the go live button, or are you just in there straight away? Done.
I don't really get anxiety these days, but I get ready a lot earlier than I need to. So normally I'm sitting there with a full face of makeup, just like twiddling my thumbs, waiting an extra like 20 minutes. And sometimes that extra 20 minutes, I get a little antsy. It's less so like anxiety and more so I just want to go live, but it's really important for me to stay on a schedule because my community has come to know that specific time that I go live. So if I go live earlier or later, it can be a little disruptive. But I wouldn't say that I'm anxious. If I have, a big special stream like the front page stream or a birthday stream or anything like that, I can get a little anxious because I just want it to go well.
Yeah,
But for average streams, it's normally not too bad for me.
that's awesome. And you were saying previously how, you feel that motivation because maybe the stream went well and people were talking and you felt great. How do you cope with having a stream that wasn't the best and, you didn't feel the best and chat was quiet and dead?
Mhm. I have learned to end stream whenever I want. Because like in the past, I would force myself to stream a certain amount of time, even if I like wasn't feeling the vibes were right. But these days, especially since my body doesn't feel well all the time because of my autoimmune illness and I get
Yeah,
headaches pretty consistently, I just allow myself to end stream if I want to, and I'm less harsh on myself. I also try to remind myself that in every single thing we do, there are ebbs and flows. So when I'm teaching, sometimes my lecture goes better some days than others. When I'm writing, sometimes I'm more in the writing than other days. And streams like mine, the vibe of the stream is very contingent on who shows up and what the conversations are.
yeah,
And, you know, chat being dead is definitely a bummer for a lot of us, but that's that ebb and flow, like
yeah,
somebody could maybe have you up and they're listening to you, but they're just kind of like working on something else and enjoying the vibes. So my point is that I try to remind myself that those ebbs and flows aren't a reflection of who I am and how well I've been doing on stream. It's just a reflection of the very human nature of stream chats in general. And honestly, some of the most talented and really awesome streamers that I look up to, their chats are slower than mine, you know? So I've just tried to be better about pacing myself when it comes to streaming and not
yeah,
uh, getting too upset if, if
yeah.
if it's like a slightly slower stream.
Yeah, and you mentioned previously that, you have an autoimmune disease, so sometimes that makes it so streaming can be hard.
Hmm.
What is it like being a streamer with an autoimmune disease that sets you back?
It can sometimes cause me to cancel streams, and I think a lot of us streamers feel a little guilty when we cancel stream. Right? It's like, oh man, like if I keep canceling on Sunday, people are gonna not come on Sundays anymore because they're not gonna be used to being live on Sunday. So I
Yeah,
think it can disrupt my schedule a little bit and just make it harder to be consistent. I think a lot of streamers with disabilities, our biggest struggle is that consistency. And, consistency is one of the things that really helps you to build a strong streaming career, but it's not, attainable by everybody because life just
yeah,
sometimes throws you curveballs. Sometimes you eat a bowl of Cheerios and then on your front page stream you feel terrible, so you can't be live the whole 8 hours. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
just giving yourself grace is really important.
definitely. And to close things up, what is one thing that you would say to Selene at the start of her streaming journey?
Kick out weirdos faster.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a lot more naive and like I'm trying to think of the word for it. I was like a bleeding heart. I really wanted to like make a space for people that maybe weren't doing well or had, mental health difficulties.
Yeah,
And that's a great thing. And I still kind of do that. I endeavor to do that. But now I do that with a lot stricter boundaries. And when I first started streaming, I didn't have those boundaries in place necessarily. And there were a handful of people who came into my life and were just extremely manipulative, did extremely uncomfortable things, and still to this day, there's a community of people that hate me uh, to my core because I, had a really bad experience with a chatter who was pretty popular in other people's streams.
yeah.
And I tried to warn them about this chatter, and they essentially took his side. So I was like, I'm not dealing with any of you people anymore.
No,
So,
yeah.
but it was so upsetting. I spent evenings just like not being able to fall asleep because I was so upset about what these other people thought of me. And now, obviously, removed so far from that, I look back at the start of my streaming journey and I go, oh, why did you care so much about them, Selene? They're literally not good people if they're taking that guy's side. He was a fucking creep. Like, why do you care about their opinions so much? So I obviously have learned a significant amount from those experiences. Unfortunately, there have been multiple experiences, but I think a lot of, especially like femme streamers that are very kind, we have this unique experience of people coming in and wanting things from us. And
Yeah.
they won't necessarily ask us outright for those things, but they'll try to get really close to us and they'll, amplify and amplify and amplify and
Yeah.
ask you for more and more and more. So
Hmm.
just if somebody gives you the creeps, just tell them to go away. Trust your gut.
Definitely. Definitely.
Sorry
Well,
to end on that note.
no, on that note, no. You have 10 seconds now to plug whatever you want. 10 whole seconds to plug
um,
whatever you want. Go.
I am Selendrea on Twitch, and I am Selendrea on Blue Sky, and I am Selendrea with an underscore on Instagram. And if you come to my stream, you can be a silly Billy with us. We like to keep it whimsical through the horrors of life. Yeah, and I'm very stinky, so if you want to experience that for yourself, you can come watch me on Twitch, and we can hang out and have a good time. How's that?
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Well done. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It has been
Thanks for
so
having me.
fun. Of course, of course. It was so great to learn more about you and how you started streaming and all that jazz. And I hope you have the most amazing day.
Oh, you too.
Friends, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate it. If you would like to follow me on my socials, on my YouTube, feel free to click that subscribe button down below. I also stream on Twitch. Shocker, woo. I also stream on Twitch, so feel free to follow me there. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.